You're here because something inside you is tired. Tired of performing. Tired of shrinking yourself to fit into boxes other people built. Tired of that gnawing feeling that the life you're living isn't actually yours. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to hear what Nietzsche knew over a century ago. That the need for approval isn't kindness. It's a prison. And most people die in that cell, never knowing they held the key all along. Friedrich Nietzsche spent his life watching people sacrifice their authentic selves on the altar of other people's opinions. He saw how the desperate hunger for validation turns individuals into echoes, how the fear of disapproval creates a world full of shadows pretending to be people. And he warned us. He screamed it from every page he wrote. The moment you start living for applause, you stop living for yourself. But here's the tragedy. Most people only understand this warning when it's too late to heed it. The first truth: your identity becomes their property. The moment you hand over your sense of self to other people's opinions, you become their property. Not legally, but psychologically. Every decision you make gets filtered through an imaginary committee in your head. What will they think? What will they say? Will they still like me? Nietzsche called this the slave morality. Not because you're literally enslaved, but because you've voluntarily chained your worth to external validation. You wake up each morning and ask not, what do I want to create today, but how can I avoid disappointing anyone today? Think about it. When was the last time you made a significant decision without considering how others would react? When did you last express an opinion that you knew might be unpopular? If you can't remember, you've already surrendered your identity to the crowd. The approval seeker lives in constant anxiety because they're trying to be everything to everyone, which means they end up being nothing to themselves. They become masters of shape-shifting, expert chameleons who've forgotten what their original colors were. And the cruelest part, the people whose approval they so desperately seek often don't even know the real them, because there's nothing real left to know. The second truth: approval is always conditional. Here's what nobody tells you about living for approval: it's never unconditional. The moment you step out of line, speak your truth, or grow beyond their expectations, that approval evaporates. Why? Because it was never really about you. It was about you fitting their narrative, serving their comfort, validating their choices. Nietzsche understood that genuine relationships are built on authentic connection, not performance. When someone truly values you, they want to see your real thoughts, your struggles, your growth, even when it challenges them. But approval-based relationships, they're transactional. You perform, they approve. You stop performing, they withdraw. The approval addict lives in constant fear of this withdrawal. They monitor their behavior like a hawk, self-censoring thoughts, hiding dreams that might seem too ambitious, too different, too much. They become professional people-pleasers, and people-pleasing isn't love, it's fear wearing a smile. You know you're living for approval when you find yourself exhausted by relationships that should energize you, when you feel lonely even in a room full of people who like you, when you catch yourself lying about small things just to avoid any possible conflict. The third truth: the approval game is rigged. Nietzsche had a brutal insight. The approval game is designed to be unwinnable. Why? Because the standards keep changing. The people keep changing. What they celebrated in you yesterday might irritate them tomorrow. What they found charming at first might bore them later. You're chasing a moving target while standing on shifting sand. But here's the deeper issue. Even if you could somehow please everyone all the time, you'd lose yourself completely in the process. The version of you that everyone approves of isn't really you. It's a carefully curated performance, a highlight reel designed for maximum likability. And what happens when the performance becomes exhausting? When you can't remember who you were before you started performing? When does the mask feel more real than the face it's covering? That's when people face their midlife crisis, experience an existential breakdown, and have that moment where they realize they've been living someone else's life. The tragedy isn't that they failed at the approval game, it's that they played it in the first place. The fourth truth: disapproval reveals your authentic path. Here's where Nietzsche's philosophy gets revolutionary. He believed that disapproval, when it comes from living authentically, is actually a compass pointing toward your true path. When you stop acting and start being yourself, some people will walk away. This isn't failure, it's information. The people who disapprove when you set boundaries weren't respecting those boundaries anyway. The people who get uncomfortable when you stop people-pleasing were probably taking advantage of your need to please. The relationships that don't work with your real self weren't meant to last in the first place. Nietzsche talked about the idea of amor fati, which means loving your fate. Part of loving your fate means accepting that your authentic life will disappoint some people. And that's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. Because disappointing the wrong people is how you make room for the right ones. When you lay over bitter to agree everyone and be everything for everyone, you bolt being truly yourself for someone. When you stop performing happiness, you attract people who can handle your full range of emotions. The fifth truth: self-respect begins with self-approval. The antidote to approval addiction isn't becoming completely antisocial or dismissing all feedback. It's developing what Nietzsche called self-reverence. The ability to validate yourself from the inside out. This means learning to be a good friend to yourself, a reliable person you can count on, and someone who keeps you motivated and encouraged. Self-approval isn't narcissism or arrogance. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own values, understanding your own journey, and being able to look yourself in the mirror without flinching. It's saying, "I'm proud of how I handled that," without needing anyone else to confirm it. People who truly feel good about themselves don't feel the need to keep proving their worth all the time. They don't fish for compliments or get defensive when criticized. They can say, "I don't know," without feeling inadequate. They can change their minds without feeling foolish. They can apologize without feeling diminished. This inner validation creates a kind of psychological freedom that approval seekers never experience. Because when you're not dependent on external validation, you can make choices based on what's actually best for you, not what looks best to others. The sixth truth: your gifts emerge when you stop hiding. Nietzsche believed that every individual has unique gifts, ways of seeing, creating, and contributing that no one else can replicate. But these gifts can only emerge when you stop trying to fit in. Why? Because your gifts are probably connected to the very things that make you different, weird, difficult to categorize. The approval seeker buries their gifts under layers of conformity. They sand down their rough edges, dim their brightest lights, and muffle their strongest voices, all in service of being acceptable. But acceptable is the enemy of exceptional. Think about the people who've made the biggest impact on your life. Were they the ones who never challenged you, never made you think, never stood out in any way? Or were they the ones who dared to be themselves so fully that it gave you permission to do the same? Your gifts, your real contributions to the world, are waiting on the other side of your need for approval. But you'll never discover them while you're busy being what everyone else wants you to be. The seventh truth: solitude becomes sacred, not scary. One of the clearest signs that you're breaking free from approval addiction is that solitude stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like refuge. When you're living for others' validation, being alone feels dangerous because there's no one there to reassure you that you're okay. But as you develop genuine self-respect, solitude becomes where you recharge, where you reconnect with your authentic thoughts and feelings, where you remember who you are without any performance required. Nietzsche called this solitude of the strong, not isolation born of fear or rejection, but chosen space for growth and self-reflection. People who've learned to approve of themselves can enjoy their own company. They don't need constant external stimulation or validation to feel okay. They can sit with their thoughts, work on their projects, pursue their interests without needing an audience. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It means being able to choose connection from a place of wholeness rather than need, offering your authentic self rather than a performance, and being okay whether that's accepted or not. The eighth truth: your energy returns when you stop performing. Living for approval is tiring because you're always following, fluctuating, and brutal to number the way others challenge you to. You're running multiple programs in your head. What do they want me to say? How should I act? Am I being too much? Not enough? It's like having a browser with 50 tabs open. Everything runs slower. When you stop action something, that energy restores to you. Suddenly you have mental space for creativity, for problem solving, for actually engaging with life instead of just managing everyone's reactions to you. You discover interests you didn't know you had because you were too busy curating an acceptable personality. People who've broken free from approval addiction often report feeling like they've woken up from a long sleep. Colors seem brighter. Conversations feel more real. Decisions become clearer. Why? Because they're finally using their full mental and emotional capacity for living instead of performing. This returned energy often leads to rapid growth, new achievements, deeper relationships, and a sense of vitality that approval seekers rarely experience. The ninth truth: you start attracting your tribe. Here's the beautiful paradox Nietzsche understood. When you stop trying to appeal to everyone, you start attracting the people who are meant for you. When you're authentic, flaws, quirks, opinions, and all, you become a magnet for others who value authenticity. The relationships you build from this place are fundamentally different. They're based on mutual respect rather than performance, genuine interest rather than obligation, chosen connection rather than social necessity. These people don't love you despite your imperfections. They love you, including them, and you love them back differently too. Because you're not trying to manage their opinion of you, you can actually see them clearly. You can support their growth even when it challenges you, celebrate their successes without feeling threatened, and offer genuine care instead of performative niceness. The approval seeker collects relationships like accessories, often feeling lonely in a crowd. The authentic person cultivates fewer but deeper connections, feeling understood even when alone. The 10th truth: you become anti-fragile. Nietzsche introduced the concept that would later be called anti-fragility, the ability to grow stronger from stressors rather than just surviving them. When you're dependent on approval, criticism crushes you. Rejection devastates you, and any form of disapproval feels like a threat to your existence. But when you've developed genuine self-respect, these things become information rather than identity threats. Criticism helps you grow. Rejection redirects you toward better fits. Disapproval confirms you're living authentically rather than performing. This doesn't mean becoming callous or dismissive of all feedback. It means being able to evaluate feedback based on its merit rather than its emotional impact, to consider the source and their motives, and to integrate useful information without letting it define your worth. The approval-dependent person is fragile. Any negative feedback can shatter them. The self-approving person is anti-fragile. They can use even harsh feedback as fuel for growth. The final truth: freedom is your birthright. Nietzsche's ultimate message was this: you were born free and you've been trained into captivity. The need for approval isn't natural, it's learned. The fear of disapproval isn't wisdom, it's conditioning. The belief that you need other people's permission to be yourself isn't truth, it's trauma. Your freedom isn't something you have to earn through perfect behavior or universal approval. It's something you reclaim by remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's your birthright, and the only thing standing between you and that freedom is your willingness to disappoint people who were never truly for you anyway. The path back to yourself isn't easy, but it's simple. Start small. Express one authentic opinion. Set one boundary. Notice who supports your authenticity and who punishes it. Gradually expand your circle of honesty until it includes your whole life. Remember, every moment you spend being someone else is a moment you're not being yourself. And the world needs what only you can offer. Not your performance, but your presence. Not your agreement, but your truth. Not your approval seeking, but your authentic contribution. And you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too much or not enough. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, and the people who matter will see that when you stop hiding it. The approval you're seeking from others? It's been inside you all along, waiting for you to give it to yourself. Stop performing, start being. Stop seeking approval, start living. Your authentic life is waiting.